Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We all want to know how we deal with fear, especially when things feel so uncertain.
Definitely a question for the ages.
Yeah, and today we've got a really great jumping off point. This podcast episode called Divine Assurance, the Strength of God's Promise.
Oh, yeah, I think we can pull a lot from that one.
Yeah, and especially because we're going to be looking at it from a pretty unique angle.
That's right. We'll be diving into this as Israelites, servants, and followers of Yahweh, and also bringing in that theological perspective.
It's about taking those ancient words of wisdom and, seeing how they apply to our lives.
Absolutely. And the episode really sets the stage for this exploration right from the beginning with a powerful prayer.
Oh yeah, I love that part.
It starts by acknowledging the weight of uncertainty. Yahweh, our God, we come before you today with hearts burdened by the uncertainties of this world.
It really sets the tone.
It does. And then it goes on to ask for strength to face our fears, that wisdom to seek guidance and for peace.
That peace that surpasses all understanding.
Exactly. Lead us, guide us, and protect us, that we may walk in your ways and find solace in your presence. Amen.
Beautiful. And then it really digs into the core message, the heart of the episode.
Yeah, it all centers around that powerful verse from Deuteronomy.
Chapter 31, verse 8.
And the Lord, He is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed.
Such powerful words of comfort. But, how do we actually apply this to our lives?
Especially today.
Yeah, the world's a pretty crazy place right now. We've got conflicts, economic uncertainty, social unrest.
It can feel really overwhelming.
It does sometimes. And that's where the episode really gets interesting because it connects this ancient wisdom to today's anxieties.
It draws these really insightful parallels between the challenges of the Israelites and the challenges we face today.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like they were wandering through the desert, facing all this uncertainty and fear.
And we're kind of doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, navigating this world that can feel unpredictable and chaotic.
Exactly. But the thing is, just like Yahweh promised to guide and protect them.
That promise extends to us today.
It does. It's about recognizing that Yahweh's presence is constant no matter what we're going through.
Like, even if we're struggling with personal stuff, relationships, or, something like a global pandemic.
That assurance is still there, offering that foundation of strength and hope.
Okay, so we've got this promise from Deuteronomy.
Right.
But the episode goes even deeper. It explores the intersection of faith and science.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts.
I know, me too. It's so fascinating.
The episode highlights the work of neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux. He's done a ton of research on fear.
Oh, wow. So this is like real science.
It is. Studies were even published in the Journal of Neuroscience.
Interesting.
Yeah, and his research shows how the amygdala, that part of our brain that processes emotions like fear,
Yeah.
well, it triggers our fight or flight response.
So when I feel that surge of panic, like when I want to run and hide when I'm scared, that's my amygdala.
Exactly. It's a primal response.
For survival, right?
Exactly. Essential back when we were facing down saber-toothed tigers.
But not so much today.
Right. Our fears are more nuanced now, more psychological, but our amygdala still reacts the same way.
And that leads to all this anxiety and overwhelm.
Even in everyday situations.
Wow. So where does faith come in? Like, how does trusting in Yahweh, like Deuteronomy 31.8 says, actually calm that fear response?
Well, the episode brings in some really cool research from Harvard Health Publishing.
Oh, wow. More science.
It shows that mindfulness and contemplative prayer can actually calm the amygdala down.
Wait, so you're saying science is backing up the idea that prayer can actually impact our brains?
It really is, and it makes sense if you think about it.
How so?
Well, people of faith have been turning to prayer for comfort and peace for centuries.
Yeah, that's true.
And now science is showing that these practices actually have a real physiological effect.
So it's not just about believing in something unseen. It's about practices that have a real measurable impact.
Exactly, on our mental and emotional state.
That is incredible. So how does the episode tie this back to the perspective of an Israelite living by Yahweh's laws?
It presents this scientific evidence as like a modern validation of that ancient wisdom,
Yeah, that's interesting.
The Israelites, they lived in a world with very real dangers, so they relied heavily on their faith in Yahweh for protection and guidance.
Makes sense.
And the episode argues that their practices of prayer and contemplation, which were rooted in their covenant with Yahweh, were essentially early forms of mindfulness.
So they were already doing what we were just starting to understand with science.
Exactly. They were managing fear and finding peace in challenging times.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. But it also makes me think, we're constantly bombarded with negative news and social media feeds.
Right.
And that definitely triggers my amygdala.
For sure.
So how do we create space for those contemplative practices? Like, how do we actually calm our minds when the world feels so chaotic?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really important question. And it's something the episode tackles head on. It acknowledges that constant stream of news and social media
Yeah.
and how it can really amplify those fears and anxieties.
Like we're wired to focus on threats, right?
Right.
And our phones just keep feeding us those threats, whether they're real or not.
It's true, and it creates this kind of feedback loop where our amygdala is just constantly on high alert.
So we never really get a break.
It's like our brains haven't quite caught up to the digital age, you know?
Like we're still in survival mode.
Yeah, wired for those immediate physical threats.
But now those threats come in the form of news alerts and, those endless social media posts.
Exactly. And the episode makes this really interesting point about how this information overload actually makes us more vulnerable.
Vulnerable to fear.
Yeah, to fear and even manipulation. It's like our critical thinking gets hijacked by our emotions.
You know what? I've totally felt that. Like I'll be scrolling through my feed and see all these headlines about, conflict and disasters.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to feel this sense of dread, even if it's not happening to me directly.
It's a natural response, but the episode encourages us to be more aware of how this information overload affects us,
Affects us mentally and emotionally.
Exactly. It's about taking back control, being more discerning about what we let into our minds.
And creating space for things that bring us calm and clarity.
Exactly.
So what can we actually do? Like I can't just unplug from the world completely.
Of course not, but the episode offers some really practical strategies. A lot of them actually come from those ancient Israelite practices.
Oh, that's cool.
Like setting boundaries with technology, creating those dedicated times to disconnect from our devices.
Unplug and recharge.
Yeah, and engage in activities that nourish our souls.
Like spending time in nature.
Exactly, or connecting with loved ones, or even just sitting in silence.
Letting our minds settle.
Those practices might seem simple,
Especially in our tech-driven world.
Yeah, but they offer a powerful antidote to that digital overload.
I mean, it's like going back to basics,
Right.
Rediscovering those ancient rhythms of life that bring peace and connection.
And what's interesting is even in the digital age, there's this growing movement of people seeking out these practices.
Like people are craving that balance.
Yeah, a way to be in the digital world without being overwhelmed by it.
You see it everywhere, right? Like mindfulness apps, contemplative retreats.
Even those trending hashtags, like hashtag digital detox and hashtag mindful living.
It's like a modern-day exodus.
Out of the digital wilderness.
And into a more intentional, grounded way of life.
I love that analogy.
It's encouraging to see that movement gaining traction.
Definitely.
But the episode doesn't just talk about disconnecting from the digital world, right?
Right.
It also talks about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, something that gives us purpose and meaning.
And that's where the idea of a Yahweh-centered lifestyle comes in.
That's right. The episode argues that by aligning our lives with Yahweh's teachings and principles,
We create a foundation of stability.
and purpose that helps us through those tough times.
So it's not just about calming our minds or, avoiding negativity. It's about actively cultivating a life that's rooted in something deeper.
Something that goes beyond those everyday anxieties.
Exactly. And this isn't a new idea, right?
Not at all.
The Israelites built their entire lives around Yahweh's laws and teachings.
They found strength and direction in their relationship with him.
It was a way of life for them.
A lens through which they viewed the world.
And the episode suggests that we can find that same strength and direction.
By bringing Yahweh's teachings into our own lives, even in the modern world.
That's powerful, but what does that actually look like?
How do we apply those ancient teachings to today's complex world?
The episode offers some really interesting answers. It points to the Ten Commandments
As a frameworks of ethical living.
and argues that these principles, even though they're thousands of years old,
They're still relevant today.
it's amazing how those principles have stood the test of time.
It's not just about individual peace of mind,
It's about building a society that reflects Yahweh's values.
Of justice, compassion, respect for others.
The episode emphasizes that following Yahweh's laws isn't about blind obedience.
Or earning favor.
It's about a way of life that benefits everyone.
Ourselves and the community around us.
It's like a ripple effect, right?
Yeah, where our actions guided by these principles create a more just and compassionate world.
But how does the episode connect this back to overcoming fear? That's where it gets really insightful. The episode suggests that aligning our lives with Yahweh's teachings creates a sense of order.
And stability amidst all the chaos.
It's like having a moral compass.
Yeah, one that guides our decisions.
And helps us navigate uncertainty with more clarity and confidence.
It's not just about feeling less afraid, it's about developing that inner strength and resilience.
So we can face challenges head on.
Knowing that we're aligned with a higher purpose.
That is a powerful concept. But it also raises some questions,
Like what?
Like how do we interpret these ancient laws in a modern context? And how do they fit with today's ethics and morality?
Yeah, those are important questions, and the episode acknowledges that applying these principles today does require some thought,
It's not just about blindly following the rules.
Exactly. It emphasizes that Yahweh's laws are meant to guide us.
To give us wisdom.
And we have to interpret them in a way that's faithful, but also relevant to the challenges we face today.
Makes sense. So, like, how would we apply something like, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor in the age of social media?
That's a great example. It takes on a whole new meaning now, doesn't
It
it?
really does, because misinformation spreads so quickly online.
It's like wildfire, and we have a responsibility to be discerning about what we share and what we believe.
To think about the harm that false information can cause.
Exactly. It's about applying the spirit of the law to our digital world.
I like that. So the episode is saying that the Ten Commandments can help us build a more just and equitable society even today.
That's right. And it's not just about that specific commandment, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, take thou shalt not steal, for example.
I
It's
see.
not just about physical property, right?
I guess not.
It's about respecting other people's rights and resources.
Especially in a world with so much economic inequality.
Exactly. It challenges us to look at the systems that create injustice and to advocate for fairness.
So these ancient principles can guide us as we face these complex ethical dilemmas.
They can be like a moral compass.
But not everyone interprets these teachings in the same way, right?
That's true, and the episode acknowledges that, but it emphasizes the importance of dialogue, you know?
Talking to each other.
Yeah, even when we disagree and trying to find common ground.
So we can build a society that reflects those values of justice, compassion, and respect.
Exactly, because we're all in this together,
All trying to live according to a higher purpose.
even with our differences and imperfections.
You know, it's amazing how this episode connects those ancient teachings with modern science and today's challenges.
It really shows the enduring power of Yahweh's teachings.
How relevant they still are to our lives.
It's like we're rediscovering these truths in a new light.
Finding fresh meaning and inspiration for the 21st century.
And I think the episode beautifully highlights the potential of a Yahweh-centered life.
It's not about escaping the world's problems.
It's about engaging with them from a place of faith, strength, and compassion.
Trying to make a positive impact.
It's finding that balance between inner peace and outward action.
Seeking solace in Yahweh's presence while working towards a better world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that fear doesn't have to control us.
We have the power to choose faith over fear.
Yahweh's promise in Deuteronomy 31:8 offers a powerful antidote to anxiety.
It reminds us that we're not alone.
We have a source of strength and guidance that's always there.
And by aligning our lives with Yahweh's teachings, we can find peace, even in the midst of chaos.
It's about remembering that we're stronger than we think, more resilient than we know, and deeply loved.
That's a beautiful message to hold on to.
So to our listeners out there, embrace the power of divine assurance. Seek Yahweh's presence in your life. Draw strength from His promises.
And let that assurance guide you through whatever challenges you face.
Remember, you're not alone. You're loved, and you have the strength to overcome any obstacle.
Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep seeking those sources of strength that empower you.
To face the world with confidence and grace.